Hey y'all, Melissa here with you today, and today I'm going to show you how to hem pants. It seems like this time of year with proms and graduations, I start getting a lot of requests to hem pants. And as the shirt says, yes I sew, no I won't hem your pants. But I will show you how to do it yourself. So I bought this pair of pants that I'm wearing and they were a little bit too long for me, really dragging on the ground. And I'm going to show you the process by which I marked them, folded them up, and hemmed them so that now I can walk without getting my foot stuck on the back. Here are the supplies you're going to need at a minimum. You're going to need thread and a hand sewing needle. You're going to need scissors that can cut fabric, and you're going to need some type of ruler to check your measurements. Even if it's just you printed a ruler off the internet, you still need something to measure. And then you're going to need either straight pins or maybe a couple of safety pins. You need something to hold the hems after you pin them up to the length that you want, and then you take your pants off. Or if you're doing this for someone else, you need them to be able to take the pants off without losing your adjustments of how short they should be. Okay, here I am wearing my pants that need to be hemmed, and let me pull them up so you can see. I am wearing two different shoes here because this particular pair of pants I want to be able to wear both with a low heel and with a flat shoe. So I'm going to pin up both legs, and then I'll sort of split the difference between where I want them hemmed so that they're a little bit shorter than if I was always going to wear heels and a little bit longer than if I was always going to wear flats. You may need to get somebody to help you with this if you're not able to reach down and like pin your pants. But the easiest way to do it is kind of to cuff them and then look and see, is that still too long, too short? How do you feel about that? It can also help to have a mirror where you can look, because the way it looks in a mirror or at a camera is going to look a little different than how it might look when you're staring down at your feet. So, pinning and checking, I think this length is pretty good for if I'm wearing heels, and this is pretty good for if I'm wearing flats, like my pant breaks but it's not dragging on the ground. So I'm going to take these off now, and then we'll mark and unpin, and I'll show you how to cut them. Okay, here are my pants, and they are pinned up, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure how much of the cuff that I am cutting off on each side. So over here on the side where I was wearing the heel, in the front I've got it at 7/8 of an inch, and in the back it looks like I pinned it at 3/4 of an inch. By the way, it is common and not unheard of to go ahead and leave your hem longer in the back of your pants than in the front because of the way your feet stick out in the front. On the side where I was wearing the flat shoe, it looks like I did 1.5 in the front and 1.5 in the back. So it was the same on that one. So I've got it either 1.5 inches all the way down to 3/4 inches here. I'm going to split the difference. I think I'm going to hem these about 1 inch and 1/8. And that is where I'm going to end up marking these. So I'm going to take my pins out now, and I'm going to turn my pants wrong side out. So I'm not going to be able to just fold this up and hem because that would make it too thick on the bottom. And I want to note that the current hem is 1.5 inches deep. So in order to do a 1 1/8 inch hem, like to make these 1 1/8 inch shorter but still keep that 1.5 inch hem, I'm going to have to seam rip and take out the original hem. So you're just looking for the threads that are holding the cuff up, and then you want to very gently unpick those. And after you get 1 or 2, it's easier to go in and continue seam ripping. Now, if you don't have a seam ripper, you might be able to use scissors, and you're just kind of cutting those threads as you go. Don't pull too hard, like I'm pulling gently here and that's ripping a few stitches. Don't pull too hard though, because you could make a hole in your pants. Once you're done taking out the current hem, go through and just kind of pull out any other threads. And I know this is a little difficult to see right now. I will be switching to a different color so that you can see later when I get to the actual hemming, but you should be able to see the marking on this. So you can see this fold where my original hem was, and I want to measure up 1 1/8 inches above that fold. I'm going to mark in the seam allowance here so I can see it easier through my ruler. But if you don't have a see-through ruler like I do, you can also just, use a regular ruler where you can see the fold on either side and make several marks to connect. So this is where I want my new hem to be. But I don't want to cut it here because remember, I need that additional fabric below it. So I'm going to need, for a 1 1/2 inch hem below this, I'm actually going to need 1 3/4 inches below, because I'm going to need 1/4 inch to fold up. Again, I'll show you that in a minute. Just know for a 1 1/2 inch hem, you need to go 1 3/4 inches below. So using my ruler, here is the line where I actually want to cut, and I'm going to pull down. This is I'm going to check the leg here. Okay, this is the front side of my pants. So I'm just going to pull this edge down a teeny bit lower than my back edge, and that means that I'll cut the same amount at the sides, but at the center back it will be just a teeny bit longer. Okay. Now I need to cut the same amount off my other leg. Okay, I've switched to a pretend pants leg here. This is just the bottom end, but let me show you how to fold everything so that you're going to hem it. It's easier, I think, to see on this color than on those black pants that I'm actually hemming. At the bottom raw edge here, we don't want a raw edge showing on our hem. So this was that extra 1/4 inch I added below the hem, and you want to go ahead and fold, and depending on what fabric you're using, you maybe can press this with an iron, or you might need to press it or just pin it and press it with your fingers because it's dry clean only fabric. Once you have that 1/4 inch pressed up, then you will press that 1.5 inches up, so that you have a cuff. And you do want to, again, try to take your ruler and, check that you've made the cuff. This is only a 1 inch cuff here. You want to check that you've made the hem the same all the way around. Now, you absolutely don't need to have a 1 1/2 inch hem or a 2 inch hem or any particular measurement in mind. It's going to depend on how tall you are when you're rehemming your pants. Maybe instead of hemming them shorter, you're actually going to take out the stitches, make your pants a little longer because you're tall, and you need to do a less deep hem. If that's the case, then this is kind of how you do it. You don't want to go below about 3/4 of an inch if you can avoid it, because you'll have pants that will flip out at that point. So once you've got your pants at the same length and you've pressed a cuff in, you can either, if it's this kind of fabric like twill where it's just holding the cuff, you can leave it that way, or you can add some straight pins if you would like to hold that cuff. Then we are going to use a hand sewing needle and thread to sew this, and I'm going to switch the camera even closer so you can see exactly what I'm doing. If you have questions about what type of thread to use, I'm using all-purpose thread, and I have a more in-depth discussion of thread linked below. And then again, I'm just using a hand sewing needle. If you would like to hem your pants with a sewing machine and you have one that will do a blind stitch, I've got a different video, and that is linked below, that shows you how to use your sewing machine. So I'm just going to change up the camera and show you close up how to hand hem your pants. Let's talk about hand sewing needles really quickly. So you may end up buying like a multi-pack of needles, like this is what I got. And there's a whole different variety of them in here. And it may be tempting to get something down from this end with the bigger eyes. Here's one that's out. And you can see it has a bigger eye, so that would be easier to thread. And it's a little bit thicker, so it's easier to hold. But this is an embroidery needle. This is not the type of needle you want to hem your pants. Instead, you want to choose one of these down here. These are the sharps, and this is what a sharp needle looks like. You can kind of compare them. The sharp needle is thinner and it has a smaller eye. That does make it a teeny bit more difficult to thread, but this type of needle will be able to help you hem and not have the thread visible on the right side. When you're ready to hem and you've either pressed or you've pinned this hem, here is how you're going to stitch it. You're going to take a length of thread. We're going to thread the needle. You want to take the end of the thread, wrap it around your finger. My thread is going over my finger. Take the little end from the bottom, pull that loop over so that you're making a knot. And then we're going to pull that knot to the end of the thread. So you can see I've got a little knot there. And you can snip off the thread below the knot. So we're going to come up through the little pressed cuff with the needle so that the knot gets buried behind the cuff. Don't pull too hard because you will pull the thread right through. Then you're going to move down a little ways. You're going to go straight up and down with your needle. And you want to, my finger is on the back side here. You want to kind of barely poke your finger and then come back up. Okay, do we see how that needle has gone through? And we're going to pull. And that's going to be one stitch on the right side. I'm going to move down a ways again and do the same thing. And I am using contrast thread so that you can see what I'm doing, but you're going to want to use matching thread so this is less visible. So you see I'm spacing these about a 1/2 inch apart. Be careful not to let your thread ends knot up like that. Okay, so it's just a single thread here at the stitch. The double thread is up at the top. And I'm only going under a few threads of the fabric, and then I'm pulling the stitch through. Let's take a look at what this looks like on the right side. You can see those very small stitches that I'm making. If this was matching thread, you wouldn't be able to see them hardly at all. So you're just going to do that all the way around. And let me show you how to knot it when you get to the end. You're going to come back up through the cuff, and you're going to take another stitch through the cuff. So both of these go through the cuff, not through the outside, so that you have a loop like this. You want to wrap that loop around your needle 3 or 4 times. Pull your thread, and you see how that makes a little knot there, and then we can cut the thread.